All right, well, we will go ahead and get started. Then, Jill, if you want to start the recording.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending our virtual workshop today on Perusall. So just to give you a bit of an overview for what we'll be doing during this next hour, I'm going to provide an overview of the Perusall platform. We'll talk about ways that Perusall can be utilized in your classes, look at an example of a Perusall assignment, talk a little bit about best practices for using Perusall and integrating those into your courses around communicating with students. And then I have some student perspectives from a course that I'm teaching this semester where I've used Perusall, and some instructor and student resources. We've also made sure to leave a little bit of time at the end, a good chunk of time, to make sure that we have space to ask for folks to ask questions, and we'll do our best to answer those. So for those who don't know me, I'm Shauna Felkins, and I am an instructional consultant here at CELT, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Jill Abney, the Associate Director here at CELT. To get us started, I have a Mentimeter for us. So I'm wondering about what past experiences with or beliefs about student engagement with assigned reading are you bringing with you into the workshop today? So you can access the Mentimeter by visiting menti.com and entering the code below, or by scanning the QR code. So I'll just give folks a few minutes to check in there. So it's hard to get students to complete the readings. Students don't read. So lots of overlap around folks with experiences where students are maybe not completing the readings, or a few of them are. Don't know how to read for content and analysis, right? So talking about those skills in reading. So how to read, not just if they read. Skimming rather than reading for comprehension. Someone says they hate giving reading quizzes. Yes. Reading is optional, and we will teach them the material from the reading. Okay. And then someone also talked about incorporating or implying the information from the readings in the lecture. So lectures that require that from students as a way to get students to interact and make sure that they're doing the reading. So lack of some feelings around student preparedness and accountability. Okay. Yes, I like this. So that someone said, I learn almost everything from reading, but students aren't used to that, right? So the kind of perspective that we bring to the classroom about reading, and how we can perhaps get students a little bit more enthused and show them those skills. So I appreciate you all taking the time to share those thoughts with us, because I think those are important. And I think, I've certainly felt that way. A lot of us have felt this way about reading. And I was feeling that even in teaching. Currently, I'm teaching an online asynchronous course that I've taught before. And I was feeling that crunch as well. And I started looking for ways to try to bring about a little bit more engagement when it came to the assigned readings for the course. So in that search, what I landed on was a platform called Perusall. So Perusall, they brand themselves as an online reading and social annotation platform. It's a digital tool that can be integrated with our course Canvas. So Perusall offers a variety of options to customize the platform and the assignments to best meet the learning objectives of your specific course and the types of assigned materials that you would assign in your home discipline. So it offers Canvas integration. So we're able to install Perusall as an app through Canvas, which links it to the assignments so that it shows up in the course calendar for our students, which is something that we hear from them a lot, that they like to be able to have those reminders in their to-do list. And it will also link automatically to the gradebook. It also offers a variety of assignment choice. You can choose a textbook. So in that case, students would then purchase a copy of the textbook through Perusall instead of the physical copy or digital copy outside of that platform. You could use a book chapter that is scanned, a PDF of journal articles, online web articles and other sources, podcasts, videos, and more, including visual images. Students can annotate those as well. There's also the option to customize your grading. So you can set a grading scheme for the entire course that covers all of the Perusall assignments, or you can go in and modify the grading scheme for each assignment in order to best reflect what you think the learning goals are for that particular assignment for students. Perusall because it is a social reading platform, it offers group discussion, but for the entire class, but it also offers the option to do small group discussion. So you can manually create and place students into groups, or you can have Perusall create automatic groups that can either stay the same, so consistent throughout the entire semester, or can change for each assignment. So I've done a mixture of both so that students have the opportunity to interact with different students in the online asynchronous course that I'm teaching. So now that we kind of have an overview of what Perusall is and how it could be used in Canvas and what kinds of assignments you could use, I wanted us to take a look at an assignment on Perusall to see kind of what the platform looks like and to kind of walk you through what you would see as the instructor. And this is very similar to the student view as well. So this is an example assignment on Perusall from the course I'm teaching this semester. So with student permission, I pulled some screenshots from these readings. I've also made sure to de-identify any student information. So you'll see them and I'll refer to them as students A, B, and C. So in this reading, this is a PDF of one of the first readings for our course, talking about perspectives on the body from feminist theory. And students here were asked to read this and then interact with it. Since this being the first one, this was really our, how do we do this? How do we get started? So what this looks like for students is they have a couple of options, ways that they can interact with the text. So you can highlight the part of the text they want to comment on here. So they would select this with their cursor or on their iPad. And then they type in this gray text box and submit comments connected to that location in the text. That way, the instructor and all the classmates can see what specific part of the text they're referring to with their comments. So this can take a couple of forms. So students can comment, tag, and upvote. So I talked about comments a little bit, but I wanted to provide you with another example of that, what it looks like specifically in an interaction. So in assigning the Perusall assignments, have made clear to students that I am looking for a variety of comments. So it doesn't have to be the length of a discussion board post. In fact, when talking about it with them and in writing out the Canvas pages that explain Perusall to the students in the online course, I talked a lot about moving away from the one-time or two-time interactions of the online discussion boards and toward what I hoped would be a more organic form of interacting. It mimics a little bit the way that social media would work, in that students are able to pose questions. They can provide context. So if maybe they've read that source in another class or in another discipline, and they can provide some perspective from that and a way for us to revisit the text in that way. They can also respond to other students. I've said that if there's words that they are unsure about, they're free to look up the definitions and then share those with a source in the comment section as well. So offering students lots of ways that they can make comments and interact with the text. So in this interaction that I've chosen, you can see here that student A leaves a comment in which they pose a question about a key concept that they're unsure about in the text. So they ask a couple of questions, and interesting. So Perusall, you'll see, identifies that as a question that's being posed. And so it starts to offer this option. Student B then responds with a comment in which they attempt to answer the question. So they say, I was also wondering the same question. I'm thinking maybe the author means race is more central to a person's identity than ethnicity. However, that is definitely a guess, and I'm also confused, right? So they're able to express in real time what their thoughts are about this initial question. And then student C comes in and is able to use the tag feature, which will then send alerts through Perusall, and I ask students to link it to their email as well. So they will get an email when someone tags them in a post, so they'll know that they should go in and respond. So here, student C has tagged in both student A and student B, saying, hi, friends, and then offering what they think is an explanation and an answer to the question. Then you'll see that student C responds and says, thanks, that is very helpful. So here students have the opportunity to tag in each other. They can also tag everyone in their small group. They can also tag in me. So students, if they have questions about something or there's a conversation going on and they feel like, oh, we might need a little bit of backup here, they can then tag me in, and I get that email alert saying I need to go into Perusall and check in to see what's happening here, and if there's any questions I need to take a look at. So this last feature, again, is kind of mimicking social media a bit and integrating those things that I think students are familiar with likes and reactions from social media platforms into the reading experience. So I mentioned that that Perusall recognized that this was a question. So there's a feature known as upvoting through Perusall, so students can show agreement or note helpfulness of a comment or to prompt other group members to answer a question. So when it's a question, Perusall will flag it. And then I also have the ability to go in and say, that is a good question. I'm not going to answer it yet. I'm going to then click it to prompt the other members of your group to draw their attention to that. And then here you'll see upvotes where students can say, I thought this was really helpful, or I thought this was a good comment. I also have the ability to upvote as well. And so I try to use that along with written comments and feedback to show students, I think that, you're on the right track here, right? You're doing good. So there's a little bit of more of that, the feedback that's pretty quick for students to see. So then here's just the interaction overall, so you can see it without all the other stuff. So
Shauna, can I chime in real quick and just ask a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you ask students initially, you prompt them to issue a comment or a question, do you give them more guidance beyond that, or is it just how do you set that up for success?
So in the assignment descriptions for each individual reading. So I create a different Perusall assignment for each reading, and I provide guiding questions that I would like students to be able to think about while they're reading. So a lot of I don't give them examples of what a good comment is, or what I'm looking for specifically, but in that first assignment, I spent a lot of time, I would tag everyone and say, I just want to draw everyone's attention. I think this was a really helpful comment. That way they can see other student examples from their peers. Did that answer your question, Jill?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I do want to pause there because I realized that was a lot. So do folks have any questions about anything so far?
You all are welcome to put them in the chat or speak out. Kay, I think I saw you unmute, and then Janice is raising her hand.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
Yeah,
go
how
ahead.
big are your classes? How large is the enrollment in your class?
So for this class, it's a 35 students.
Okay. And so you assign reading, which you have to import it like I guess if you have a PDF, you would import it into Perusall.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so you can upload PDFs. You can link directly to websites, but so I do a lot of scanned PDFs and journal article PDFs, and so that's the bulk of what they're reading. And you just upload those directly into Perusall, and then it formats it so that students can have it. It also offers the option for students to download the PDF as well. So for accessibility. So some students I know prefer to read those separately. And then a couple of them wanted to be able to print them out because that's how they prefer to read. And that feature I think was very helpful for that.
Okay.
So Janice had her hand up, and then we've got a couple of questions in the chat. So Janice, go ahead, and then we'll turn to the chat.
Thank you. Are there any issues that have to be considered versus fair use when you're uploading things that they can then download? And has that all been looked at and it's okay because it's teaching?
So anytime you're using a textbook or specific things that are not fair use, you can Perusall has the option for you to get approval through them. So that's one of the options you can select when you're uploading documents. I know that there is a small fee attached for things that are not fair use. And then the textbooks students would buy, I know that it's definitely cheaper in Perusall than a physical copy. But
I would also recommend the same rules that you apply as you're selecting readings that you put into your Canvas course directly would apply to how you would use Perusall. That would be my recommendation there. And our
an example that I showed. Oh, sorry, Jim.
That's okay. Our librarian friends can help us navigate those rules and regulations.
Yeah, my concern in that regard was because they are UK students, they have access to resources that we have through library. But once it goes to Perusall, if they're downloading through that, is that a complication? So yes, our library friends would be really helpful.
So in the chat, Susan asks, how do you prepare students to use Perusall in terms of training them to use the technology? Is it intuitive for them, or do you have them go through a tutorial or something?
Yes. So Perusall, when you launch your specific account, as the instructor, offers disciplinary specific tutorials that students can complete. I also included the syllabus as their first kind of assignment, as a way to kind of look through, to talk about what the comments would look like and what I was looking for. So.
All right, an additional question in the chat, and then we'll go to Whitney, who's got her hand raised. Is it free for students to use this software?
Yes, so outside of if they have to buy the textbook, the software itself is free to use.
Whitney, you want to go ahead and share your question?
Yes, thank you. My question is related to the textbook, actually. So when you use the textbook, the entire textbook, and you have students purchase that through the Perusall program, is that something that you listed, I guess, along with your course, like purchasing the digital copy is a requirement for the course?
So I actually use the open access textbook for my class.
Oh, okay.
I'm very lucky that I have that option.
Okay.
But that is something that I would, if I was going to have students purchase text, then I would list that.
Listed as like the okay.
What do you think, Jill?
Well, I would think a lot about, yeah, I would ask them to purchase that textbook, but I would also think about carefully how I think one of the values of Perusall is the novelness of it, the taking of something very private, which is reading it by yourself and making it sort of an interactive and social space. And also one of the ways that becomes a useful activity is when the readings are not necessarily provocative, but at least sort of stirring in some way. And so if you're having them if it becomes very rote and you're just like, here's a chapter, make a comment, here's a chapter, make a comment, then that can get kind of redundant. And I don't know that you would be really getting the most out of it. So I would take a close look at is the textbook something you want them to access through Perusall, or is that just something for supplemental readings, things like that? I'm not saying it shouldn't be. Maybe you have a great textbook. That's a different conversation, but just would think about that. Francis has got a question in the chat here. Do you require that students select a quote from the reading to which others must respond, or do you provide the questions? How do you prevent students from building off other comments? For example, I completely agree, and generate their own ideas.
Ooh, I have some more good stuff about that as well. But I have Francis, I ask that students, if they are interacting with the same quote, that they're trying to bring something new to the conversation. So citing a different source, citing another source from earlier in the class, or bringing something else in, to try and avoid that agree. And so that actually goes to one of the other questions in the chat related to grading, which I have here. So assignments are graded on Perusall. You can have them graded automatically. And I do that, but then I also go through and spot check everything. So comments on Perusall are graded based on whether they're high, medium, or low impact, is the way that Perusall phrases it. And those things that are just like, I agree, and then don't offer anything extra, Perusall marks those as low impact. And so those aren't going to build a student's grade as much as those more novel comments that are asking their peers to engage more. I have a chart here that looks at the breakdown for an example assignment, and it's similar to the way, so things are broken down by percentage, they're weighted on Perusall. You can set how many points you would like for the grade to be out of, and then you also set the different parameters for each of these categories. So the categories for this assignment were the comment content, opening the assignment, reading to the end, active engagement time, getting responses, upvoting, and then quizzes. So I weight comments more heavily because what I'm looking for in my course is students interacting with the text. And so students are required to make a certain number of comments, and I adjust this based on the length of the text. And there's also an option in Perusall to make sure that students are dispersing their comments throughout the text and they're not just leaving them all in one space. So you can communicate that to students as well. Something like opening the assignment may sound strange, but it's actually, ask them to try and revisit the assignment more than once. And so it has it so that every time they open it, and I will explain more about the way I'm transparent around the design with students, but I ask that students open most things at least twice. Reading to the end, it just tracks that. The amount of active engagement time is time that they're actually typing in the document and highlighting things. So not just having it open, but the time that they're interacting with their peers. Getting responses, so making sure that they're posting things that their peers are commenting back to, that they're asking questions, upvoting. And again, I'm just trying to encourage that interaction. I also do reading quizzes for some assignments, but you'll notice that all of these add up to more than 100%. Because there's more than one way to receive full credit on this assignment. So a student may, finish that first pass of the reading, take the quiz, and realize, they didn't retain as much as they had hoped. And so you don't retake the quiz, but you can then go back and comment more, interact more with your peers, ask more questions of me, and then get full credit for the reading assignment. So I'm trying to encourage students, again, to build that habit of, coming back to the reading and returning to those throughout the course. So this percentage chart shows up out of a certain number of points, and that, again, is connected directly to Canvas. You have the ability to decide if you want to be able to, spot check all of the grading before it goes through, and that's something that I do as well.
Just a quick question in the chat about the grading. Can you speak to how their active engagement time and reading to the end would be affected if they downloaded the paper? Have you seen that play out?
So because they have to intersperse their comments throughout, two things. So because they're putting their comments throughout the document, normally that ends up being just fine. I try to keep that in mind when setting the active engagement time for each assignment. I also, for each unit, offer the option for students to upload their handwritten or typed notes. So I call them supplemental notes for these readings. So if they prefer to take notes another way, I use that as a way to boost their grade, to make sure that I'm catching that kind of discrepancy if there's anything. But I haven't really seen that so far. So just based on the amount of time that they're typing and interacting with their peers seems to fill those.
Because even if they're printing it off and reading it, you're still asking them to go back into the doc to add their comments and engage with each other, right? So
Yeah.
that's where those points would be.
Exactly. Yeah.
One last question from the chat, and then we'll let you get to the next piece. Have you had any students having any trouble on Mac or PC or iPad working with Perusall, or does it seem to work pretty well across devices?
No, it seems to work pretty well. So I tested this out on my iPad, and I actually looked at it on my phone as well. And it works pretty smoothly across the platforms. I think it's best on a computer. It works on both Mac and PC, and it's in browser. And so that makes it a little easier as well.
And the connection between the app and Canvas is really smooth from what we've heard as well. All right, so we'll pause on question. Feel free to put questions in the chat while Shauna continues, and then we'll have another time for Q&A at the end too.
So just to provide some more context on best practices. So I wanted to make sure that when assigning this kind of new software, that I was upfront with students that this was something that, I was going to have a learning curve with as well. So there are a couple of things that I think we might want to be mindful about when assigning something like Perusall. So we want to communicate with our students about our pedagogical choices. Why would we select this specific tool? And how do you think it would benefit the learning community and the individual student experience? We want to set clear expectations for the students' work, the work that they're completing, and their engagement with their peers. So what do they need to accomplish to demonstrate engagement based in your disciplinary best practices? And will there be a standard metric for all materials, or will it be adjusted? I mentioned that I adjust mine based on the length of the assigned material. You also might want to discuss grading, feedback, and resources for help. So talking to them about the grading feature, if you will review grades and what that looks like, how you will provide feedback. So I provide, you can provide feedback through the Perusall app itself through grading, or you can still use the speed grader function on Canvas as well if you prefer to leave holistic comments there. It might also be worthwhile to think about what resources you can provide for students. So I know that my tech knowledge is something that is limited. So on each assignment page, there is a section at the bottom that just says help. And I have resources linked there for students, and then a link as well for them to be able to email me just directly if they're experiencing any kind of difficulty. So even with what I felt, I thought I had, done a good job of preparing my students to use this new thing. And then, of course, there were still some folks around the midterm that were having a little bit of trouble with this new platform. And so some folks were worried about their grades. I did an anonymous survey asking students, what's going well, what can we work on and improve? And so I then, in response to that, created a Canvas page with some answers. So they were asking about improving their grade and why that wasn't showing up well. So I talked about leaving high quality comments and raising the level of engagement they had with their peers. And then one of the things that we've talked about in CELT has been this transparent assignment design and being, transparent with students about the choices that we make in the classroom. And so one of the questions that they asked me was, I want to know, how many comments do I need to make? How long do I need to read? And I told them that, part of my teaching is transparency. And so I wanted to be clear that I'm not going to tell them those things. I wanted them to experience the reading as, a social interaction and not as busy work as trying to check these boxes. And that I wanted them to really, try to connect with one another. And I did recognize, though, that, for some of them, that isn't quite satisfactory. And so one thing that I did was I edited the Perusall gradebook so that the gradebook counts up. And so as they interact, it counts up to a specific, to the threshold. And then I made it clear that for them, part of my pedagogy is that I would never ask them to do something I wouldn't do myself. And that I read all of the comments and that I'm going to upvote and comment. And that for me, the joy of using this platform is seeing a comment at the beginning of the reading where a student is just, very overwhelmed or confused. And then by the end or somewhere, in the middle is saying, oh, this makes sense now. So I ended up putting all of this information into a page that they could have access to anytime on Canvas. And then I asked that, they reach out to me if they're still having trouble. So I think that is something we have to be prepared for anytime we're using a kind of new platform, right? Is how we're going to respond to students, and then making sure that we have a plan to communicate with students and address those concerns around grading. And since then, we have not seemed to have any problems. It's all been pretty good. So in that survey, though, there were some really great responses, and I pulled a couple. So these are comments from students in that course that I thought highlighted their experience with the platform, about feeling very engaged in the class, even though it's an online class. Someone said that they loved getting the comments, seeing that their input helped someone else in the class, and that it helped them read to understand the content rather than reading just to get it done. And I asked students to do reflective learning journals, and that this seems to be something that comes up a lot. is that they enjoy the Perusall platform, and especially in this online asynchronous space where we don't always have all the options to try and build that community. This has kind of given them a little bit more of an opportunity to do that. So I think this will be particularly helpful. I've put together, or at least I hope it is, I've put together a resource guide for you so you can access it. It's a Google Doc, and you can visit this link, bit.ly/CELP Perusall. And there's, you'll see resources there that starts with how to use Perusall with Canvas, step-by-step guides, information about customizing settings, managing student groups. There's also a scoring example that can be shared with students, and an example assignment description that you could use when writing the language for your courses as well. I've also included some of the videos that I share with students. So a student's guide to navigating Perusall. The Perusall platform itself has a YouTube channel that's been very helpful that provide very detailed walkthrough videos. And they also have a podcast where they talk about student experiences with Perusall and the pedagogy behind this kind of social reading platform. So I think there we can pause for more questions. Jill, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Just that I think it's a really positive intervention for classes where, especially if you're the type of person who's really reliant on readings, as I am, I'm a historian, for, you know, a lot of the cool things that I do in class are dependent on students taking the time to at least briefly engage with the text that gets us started, right? We can't just come in with just the knowledge in our brain without having some sort of spark. And looking for ways, I think the days of just throwing our hands up and saying, well, my students don't read, we have to find, you know, possible solutions to that challenge. I think this is one of them and worth trying. We do have one question in the chat. How long do you typically expect students to engage with the assignment? Several days. It seems like it would be best if they were doing it approximately the same time. Do you have like a set window?
So for a typical journal article, they receive the full credit for the assignment if they've done active engagement for 45 minutes to an hour with the document. Most of them do respond over several days, rather because they do get tagged in. And so that, because I've included that in the grading and Perusall offers that as an option, it kind of brings them back to that conversation. I agree that it would, in an ideal world, right, we would be able to all be there at the same time. But this, for me, in the online asynchronous option, gives the space for everyone to kind of, in the way that you would in the Facebook comments, right? The way that you could kind of go away and do the things that you need to do and then come back and return to that at another time when you have more time and space to respond in the way that you would like.
I think the use of appropriate deadlines too can help with that. Say, you know, asking students to have the reading and engagement done at a certain time, but that happens to be a day or so before maybe you're going to discuss it in class or something like that, so that if they wait to the last minute, it's still not the last minute because you made the last minute a time in which they couldn't do it. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of folks asking about groups. Oh, wait, I skipped one. Aaron Richards is asking about scaling up for large classes with 200 to 300 students. I'd imagine dividing into small groups would be ideal there. Other thoughts for Aaron?
I've also seen a couple of use cases out of Michigan for large in-person classes where that became a lot of the work that TAs were doing was reading the Perusall, providing comments, and then there's always the option to tag in the instructor to things that really need the instructor's attention. So questions that need that touch point.
Yeah.
And
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Nope,
Shauna.
you go ahead, Jill.
I was just gonna say another question about groups is, let's say you already have groups formed. Can you form your groups in Perusall around groups that you've already got in existence?
Yes.
Talk just a little bit more about the group functionality.
Yes, so you can set up groups for each individual assignment or for the course as a whole, and you can select the group. So if you already have those groups formed, then you can put them in as well. Using that function, you can do a couple of things that I didn't really touch on, but I had a student choice assignment where I had selected 2 journal articles, and students chose the article that they thought they were most interested in. And so I was able to group them based on that within Perusall, and that's all set up automatically through Canvas. And then you can also use it for a peer review function where you can set up an assignment where students can submit their work to Perusall, and then it would be assigned to their group for them to review and use the same kind of interface that you would for the social reading.
So you use the Canvas group function to set up groups for the Perusall groups. Is that accurate?
Those
No.
aren't
No, they're
connected.
not. They don't talk. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I will say that discussion boards can, if you're still like, I don't know about Perusall, you can assign discussion boards to small groups as well, which is really effective in large courses, because students can get overwhelmed with all the millions of comments that come in. If you break them into smaller groups, that can be useful. Kay has her hand up, and then we've got a couple more questions in the chat.
So every time something is graded, you occasionally have a student who says, oh, I did something, but it didn't work. Can I get my points? And I'm imagining in a class of 200 or 300, 10%, let's say 10% of the students say, I spent this much time on Perusall, but Perusall didn't register it, or some glitch like that. And then you have to go in and adjust those grades. Have you had experience with things like that?
I haven't so far, but I'm sure that that students would, that has the potential to arise as a problem. There's no way for me to edit that.
Okay.
So Perusall it tracks, all that sounds a little more surveillance-y than I would like, but it does provide you the information of what it gives a breakdown when you're grading that shows how much time each student spent. So it will show you a list of comments by student, how Perusall has high, medium, low impact. And then it will break down that specific student's requirements for the interaction. I have had students that, in this semester around the midterm that were curious about that. And so I did show them, this is what it looks like for me. This is what I'm seeing, is that you spent, this much time. So if you're spending this much time, let's talk about then strategies you could use in the next assignment in order to make sure that you're fulfilling that requirement, right? So maybe you should interact more with your peers, leave more comments, spend more time answering people's questions if you can, bringing in outsourced resources, etc.
I would also, I think, and I don't know about how you would, or how you could adjust this in the grade book, but if a student came to me and said, I spent 45 minutes like reading and commenting, but it didn't show up, I would be willing to say like, well, great, then just go ahead and write me an email writing up what you said. Surely that's at least something's there stuck in your mind from that moment. It might not be word for word what you said, but write up some general takeaways, and I'd be happy to try to compensate your grade in that way. Question in the chat, are some readings, quote, better suited for this type of engagement than others? Yeah, I think so. I'll let Shauna chime in first, but Shauna, you have thoughts on that? What has worked best?
I have noticed that students are more engaged when I use podcasts. That's an option for them. And more popular or public facing texts. So more articles online that are written by academics but written for a public audience. They do seem to still struggle a little bit more with the journal articles, but it really is, Jill, I think, mentioned something about having something that is a text that is exciting or provocative in some way, in that it provides something new for them to consider. So that first example that I showed was an overview, and it was a historical overview of all of feminist theory. That was didn't go as well. Students didn't seem to engage with that one as much as they did like when we read, you know, Sarah Ahmed several weeks later. They seemed a little bit more not as engaged with that one. So
yeah, I think your best practices for choosing readings in general are going to serve you well when choosing readings for your perusal assignments. Making sure students have content and context knowledge around the piece that allows them to sort of a scaffolding from which to hang that knowledge that they're picking up from the reading. Some quality prompting. I mean, Shauna's built this sort of support system around how they use it. That's going to be important. Just like students who are new to academic reading in general need to be taught how to read academic stuff. So it's a similar challenge. It's a similar selection of things. I mean, can you make it work with a textbook? I'm sure you can. I'm sure people do it. But thinking about the why and how do you convince students of the value of it? How do you, what is there to discuss? Is there something to discuss? Then it's worth doing it socially, right? If it's just reading to pick up content that they would otherwise hear in a lecture, then maybe that's less fruitful.
right.
And you all are welcome to chime in too if you think you have ideas about these questions. Perusall must be integrated with Canvas, or can it also be installed and used independently? I think it's a web-based thing, but you'd have to pay for it if you don't use it through Canvas. Is that right, Shauna?
Yes. And then if you install it through Canvas, it gives you the option to use it as that external tool when creating assignments. But I have an account that I can use and put other things, you know, I could use it separately from Canvas, but it has a really smooth functionality if you're using it with that.
We are recording this, and I will share out the recording link to everybody who registered once it's processed and posted. Buddy, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that you're in here and help me with this question from Mary Jo. I had a Perusall before and could install it myself. Now it says the system administrator is required to do the installation in Canvas. Are you doing it as an application, Mary Jo?
Yes.
Okay. We'll see if Buddy chimes in. And
while Buddy is getting ready to chime in, Mary Jo, in our college, we don't have administrative privileges on our own computers. So it might be that Barrett, Alex, or Chase need to download it for you.
Well, it didn't have to be that way before, so I'm a little confused. Because it used to be you got a secret thing and so forth, and I got that, and I tried to use it last spring, and Perusall sent me this note that they've switched how it's installed in Canvas, and a system administrator of Canvas from our university has to install it.
yeah, I don't think you need the secret code anymore. Buddy says you should still be able to install it as an app, and we've added it to the SLAM tool for easy installation. I am not familiar what SLAM means in Canvas language, but someone can enlighten me.
It doesn't show when I try to do it in Canvas.
Okay. What it might be good for you to do, Mary Jo, is to reach out to Shauna, and Shauna can work with you to see if we can figure it out on your end. And Buddy, just put in a Canvas help link as well. Question in the chat, can you tell us more about the quiz function in Perusall, Shauna?
Yeah, so quizzes, you can create them. It's very similar to Canvas. You would create them as a separate assignment, and then you can attach them to a specific reading. So you can do, multiple choice, multiple answer, short answer, essay, and have students math expression as well. And then create as many questions as you would like, and then attach those to the specific assigned material. And so I have it set up so that reading quizzes show up at the end of the reading once they've completed it. And then students are able to take the quiz. Retakes aren't set up since I have it set to be over 100% possible. But I frame it, at least in my course, as just a way for students to gauge their knowledge, to see if they took away the things that I hope they would from the reading. And they're usually based on those guiding questions that I provide at the beginning of the assignment.
All right. Any other questions, folks?
So I've put my email in the chat, and if anyone is interested in, if you need help with troubleshooting, or if you would like some one-on-one time to, work on getting this implemented into your Canvas, or to just talk through what this could look like and potential possibilities, because you don't just have to use it the way that I've used it. There's lots of options. I would be more than happy to do that.
All right. Thank you all so much for taking the time. We'll hang around as folks filter out. And thank you guys.
Thank you all.